This is John Paul I, coming from Tokyo, Japan, and I'm going to give you my initial reactions on Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. And I thought, before I made this video, I'd be coming in mad, pissed off, tearing it apart, and we will get into all the negatives, and there are a lot of them, but I gotta say this goes for literally everybody. If you review a movie, like when it's fresh, the first weekend, even the first week, hell, even the first month, I think it's really hard to get a solid opinion out there, because we've been thinking about The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens and the first 6 movies for years and years, and things are still coming out. So you're telling me in like 5 days or even a week or even like 2 weeks you're going to give a definitive opinion? There's so much to think about. Now, having said that, I'm going to get into negatives on this channel, but for right now, for my initial reaction, I'm going to stick with the good stuff, because the entire movie wasn't complete trash. I'd say about half was. And the part that was the worst ruins the entire movie for me, which was the ending. But like I said, for this video here, I'm going to stay with just what I liked. And let me say this, I liked things in isolation. There was nothing that connected very well and flowed through very well that kept me enjoying the movie throughout. But there were moments I thought were good. So, the first standout moment for me, and by the way, no particular order, and spoilers coming up, is when Han Solo comes back and he confronts Kylo Ren. Now, obviously, the reason this was great is because we have 2 great actors. Harrison Ford is a legend, and Adam Driver is a good actor. So obviously, in the moment, this scene worked for me, because it was one of the better emotional parts of the entire Disney trilogy, and we have 2 good actors pushing it through. It also does give Han Solo kind of an important thing to do. Although it's only a memory, it is Harrison Ford, it is the real quote-unquote Han Solo, so I appreciated that one moment, and it was one of the better moments in the movie. The other moment I think that was a high point was obviously seeing young Luke and young Leia. The CGI looked good. I gotta say, they gotta have Luke get knocked down again by somebody. There's a reason. The reason is probably because that's what would definitively end her training. Like, it would be complete when she could knock him down. I'm assuming that. But, they didn't say that. They just have to show Luke get knocked down again. However, I enjoyed that moment, and that also was a high point. And I gotta say, the high points were short and sweet, but there were a few. Seeing Lando again, obviously, that was great. Billy Dee Williams works great, and I knew it was him. He comes in 25 minutes into the movie. They're getting saved. You're like, all right, they're getting saved by someone. This is probably going to be Lando, and I just called it. They had Chewie hug him. They had a proper reaction. Unlike when Chewie meets Luke in The Last Jedi, he just stands back there. Well, it's really easy to say how much better things were than The Last Jedi. And, the tone of the movie, I think they got it right. The tone was nice. It felt like it had a Star Wars feel. Although the music didn't always work for me, because, again, for me, it felt kind of fake. So this, real music kind of didn't go so well. Now I want to talk about the end scene for a second, which I really, really thought was the worst part of the Disney trilogy, but I watched it, and I said I wasn't, and the reason I watched it is because what I just said, is that it didn't feel real to me. This felt like a plastic Star Wars movie. It felt like a toy. It just felt really fake. So, halfway through, I was like, I said I wasn't going to watch the end, and I don't want to have that image in my mind, but the thing just didn't feel real. It just felt like what I was seeing didn't matter at all. It just felt like it was their own fan fiction version of what hypothetically would have happened. So I watched it. And on that, I said I was going to stay positive in this video, and at the end, the Reylo kiss did not cringe me out quite as much as I thought it would. I guess I always imagined her just kissing Kylo, right after they finished fighting or something, but I don't like that it was there. It still felt weird. To me personally, it doesn't feel like there's enough build up for it. I know they've got these hints and these subtle things, and they have these like romantic glares and everything, but it just didn't really feel like they were building towards romance. I did like the fight with Rey between herself. Again, I don't like Rey as a character, but it was a cool scene, and it kind of makes me think how much more they could have made of this movie. If they really wanted to shock people, Rey could have turned evil and just stayed evil. Then Ben could have turned back and defeated her. And maybe Palpatine. And people would be like, their heads would be spinning, their minds would be blown. Kind of like a Game of Thrones moment. But, instead we have Rey just go on to do everything almost perfectly, and again, suffer no consequences. Not like you have to lose a limb in a Star Wars movie as a law, but if they really wanted to throw back the old Star Wars in a nice, gritty, respectful way, that would have been nice. If Rey lost something, then maybe she's struggling and she ends up maybe just barely beating Palpatine with this bloody arm or something. It's nasty, it's crazy, and instead we just get her Bop, I'm gonna blow you away and blow you up, and now it looks like I'm dead and I'm not because Ben kisses me, and it's just kind of a Disney moment at that point. So could have been better, but could have been a hell of a lot better, but I'm trying to stay positive. I did like that fight. There were better lightsaber scenes in this than The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, and I do defend the lightsaber battles in the Disney trilogy. I do defend some things, very few, but some things I defend. And one thing I defend is that they shouldn't be good at lightsaber battles. They should be clumsy, they should be sloppy, and a lot of people say to me, well, they're not as good as the prequels or even the OT and things like that, but they shouldn't be. Because Kylo and Rey should not be so good at lightsaber battles, so when it looks like they're swinging clunky and slow, I think logically they shouldn't be that good. I think that's a hard point to argue against, and that's one of the few things I will defend the sequel trilogy on. The other thing I defend them on is they did pick good actors, theoretically, unknowns, and that's something that's been done in Star Wars quite a lot. There have been famous actors in Star Wars, but not the main trio, basically. Okay, now let's get into Luke, and obviously I was just waiting the whole movie to see what they did with Luke, obviously, and having him lift the X-Wing was nice to see. It was a nice throwback to Empire Strikes Back, of course. You see that for the first time, and it's nice, but when you think about it and it hits you that that's what we should have gotten in The Last Jedi, that in The Last Jedi, halfway through, he should have been back to his old self and doing that stuff, right there in the flesh. You think, now we got to get it in Force Ghost form as him doing that. So it was still enjoyable to see, but I don't think that's going to age well. And like I said quite a few times, the very first time you see something, or when it's fresh, it's always a little bit better. Then we could take a step back and think about it. Usually things degrade a little bit, and when the logic kicks in and the excitement level falls and the freshness wears off, then it's just back to, yeah, you know what, that did not work so well. Because I even thought The Last Jedi was pretty decent the first time I saw it, the first week. I was like, yeah, I really had it in my mind that because Luke did this powerful thing at the end that kind of made up for him being on the island and a hermit, and I wanted that to be in my mind. I wanted to love this movie. I'm one of those people who wanted to love it. I didn't walk out like some people and I hated it. It took about a week. And then all the things started building up, and, all the things that I thought I liked about it, which were few, but they were still holding it together, fell apart pretty quick. I didn't even know Akbar was in the movie. Then when I found out what happened, I was like, oh yeah, that's absolutely horrible. So things like that, that's what I'm saying about Rise of Skywalker. It's 2 hours and 12 minutes of crazy stuff, real quick cuts, real hard to break down after one view. So if you think you love it now, I'm sure things are going to come out that are going to make you possibly change course a little bit. If you think it's decent right now, usually it can only get worse. Unless it's like a masterpiece and people keep pointing out things you missed that are masterfully crafted. But we know, that J.J. Abrams is not a great writer. We know intentions of this movie were to retcon The Last Jedi. We know they didn't have a script for all 3 movies to go. So, in this case, it seems like it could only get a little worse as time goes on. So, I'm going to say something neutral here. This movie is being praised by some people because it got the trio together. That's not really something that's a good point about this movie. That's something that should naturally be happening, or that's something that you can expect to see. The 3 main characters to be working together, unless they're, for some reason, they've been split up from the beginning. But the fact is, that's not something that makes this movie good. That's just kind of something that they got right, you could say. So there's a guy, I think the show is called Entertainment Canada, and he was one of the few mainstream critics who tore apart The Last Jedi. And he was one of the people saying now that I liked this movie because, or I liked this about the movie. And yeah, I do like that about the movie, but it's not something that you can give them credit for or points for or think the movie's any better for that. That's just making up for lost time, basically. Anyway, like I said, these are my initial thoughts. They're pretty scattered, so I apologize. I don't have a lot of organization. I don't have time to script these, write these down, think about it. I just got to get my thoughts out there, but I think I made my main points clear. As you guys could see, there are some things I did like about this movie, but when I get into negatives, yeah, that's going to be pretty bad, because the ending really hurts it. So, I listened to Star Wars Theory's review on this. I listened to quite a few reviews, but obviously he was one of the key people I wanted to hear from, and he says he's on the fence about if it ruins or hurts Anakin's legacy, which is fair, because like I said, you gotta think about these things. It just felt like he was kind of stretching, and he had to reach too far to find ways to defend it. He had to use some philosophy and his own opinion on why certain things might or might not work. He makes a few good points, but I think he's struggling to be positive about it. We'll see. I'll probably have to make a whole video on that. I'm gonna have to make a whole lot of whole videos on things, because like I said, there's 2 hours and 12 minutes here, and although I don't consider this an actual Star Wars movie, and I'm sure people will dislike for that, it's still going to be interesting to talk about. He also said he considers like this trilogy separate from 1 through 6 in a way, but it's not, because they use original characters and original actors, so unfortunately it has to be judged together as far as their intentions. And like I keep saying, they sold it to us as episode 7, 8, and 9. If they sold it to us as a new chapter, not a continuing part of the saga, I'd be much more open to it. I'd be much more positive on the whole, and if the original trilogy characters were not in it at all, I might just like it. I wouldn't really care that Rey was a Mary Sue, because the main point of a Mary Sue is not being perfect, it's not beating everybody, it's not having superpowers. The main point of a Mary Sue is to be there to show up the original canon characters and make it look like she or he is better than them. And that's what Rey does. So, if you take those characters out of the mix, I wouldn't really care so much if she was overpowered. That would be fine with me. The problem is, she's overpowered, showing up the original trilogy characters, Palpatine, Luke, Han, I guess even Leia in certain ways. You know, that's the problem. Anyway, I'm doing shoutouts, special thanks, things like that. Let's do a shoutout right now. Giving a shout out to Kevin6. He has been dropping me some great comments. He might or might not be listening because, you know, it's tough to get to the end of like what's probably a 10-12 minute video. I don't know. But anyway, thank you very much, sir. If you're still listening, click that subscribe button. I'm going to link some videos in the back. Probably about Kathleen Kennedy, Ryan Johnson. You know the deal. Click on one of those. That would make my day. See you next time.